Hello everyone, Lone Warfare. Welcome to the week 1 episode of the Chaos Report for the Blight Challenge League. In this video, I'll be taking a look at our predictions from last week and see how they panned out. We'll also be reworking our unique item watch list to better fit the current meta, prepare some bold predictions for the future of the meta, as well as cover a few different Atlas strategies in our Atlas analysis. Lastly, we'll also be adding a new section to our currency analysis for the remainder of the Blight League, covering the blighted maps, so keep an eye out for that one. As always, do keep in mind that these are educated guesses or predictions, and as such they might not be entirely accurate. Furthermore, I might miss a thing or two that seem obvious to many, and for that, I apologize. It's hard to cover everything. If I do miss something you think is important, leave it in the comments down below. What that means, of course, is invest at your own risk. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's jump right in. As our first segment, we'll be taking a quick peek at some of the currencies that are important to track in the current and next week. Of course, as per usual, we have to talk about Exalted Orbs first. This league has seen the most drastic rise of Exalted prices today. Usually it takes about 15 days to reach the 100 in Chaos mark, as the prices plateau at about 70 or 80 Chaos for about a week. However, this league has seen pretty much no plateau before the 150 Chaos mark, which is absolutely unheard of. I've raked my brain on why this might be the case. However, I have not found a solution. In Legion, the rise was similar, but it was easily explainable by an overabundance of Chaos and other lower tier currency, as well as a gigantic increase in Exalted Orb usage for crafting purposes, as melee characters are the main users of multi-modded equipments, weapon in particular. For this league though, the overabundance of Chaos and lower tier currency is likely not a factor, as Blight seems to be more measured in its reward structure, for now at least. Similarly, multi-modded equipment should be used less frequently, considering that most players have opted out of the melee builds for the league start into necromancer builds, which scale mostly with sockets and gem levels, more so than with the multi-modded piece of gear. If any of you have an idea as to why the rise of Exalted Orbs has been this drastic for Blight League in particular, please feel free to share your considerations with us in the comments down below. As for future trends, I imagine they'll stick around the 140 to 170 Chaos mark for the next little while, as the first plateau of a league usually lasts about a week. Furthermore, this is the usual Exalted Orb prices throughout most leagues anyway, so it is very unlikely for them to rise drastically in the near future. That said, with the uncertainty of the prices for them so far, don't take this as gospel. Keep a very close eye on the Exalted prices, even on an hourly or daily basis, to make the best buying and selling decisions for yourself. A once weekly update like this will likely not be enough to keep you up to date. Additionally, with the patch coming up next week, or rather later this week, the Exalted Orb prices might fall further or increase depending on how the buffs to the blighted maps play out. So keep an eye on that. A currency that I do feel confident in making predictions for and understand the pricing with are the Alteration Orbs. Similarly to the Exalted Orbs, these bad boys have seen their highest price ever in the previous league. This was due to an abundance of the crafted equipment using the Alteration, Regal, and Annulment method. As mentioned in last week's prediction episode, that will likely continue in this league due to the addition of new crafting bases, such as the Convocation one for summoners and the continued importance for melee characters. It is highly probable that Alteration Orbs will continue to be very expensive, comparatively to previous, pre-Legion leagues. They've started a slight rise already and are projected to continue this rise in the next little while. With more people reaching maps and needing more and more well-crafted wands or helmets for the plus gem level mods, people will also craft more and more equipment using the Alt plus Regal method. I wouldn't be surprised to see them reach a 6 to 7 alts per chaos level in the next week. If Alteration Orbs do indeed reach such prices again, remember to add lower tier jewelry to your loot filter, so you can sell them for extra Alteration Shards in every map that you run. Ancient Orbs have, as predicted, seen a rather stark rise in prices already, climbing up to a very respectable 30 plus Chaos in the first week, slightly dipping off in the last day or two, however, to about 25 Chaos. The reason for this has been stated in the last episode is primarily due to the addition of the Nemesis Zana mod, as players will be able to use them on unique belts to try their luck at getting a headhunter out of them. The fact that Harbingers are also a Zana mod in this league might explain the slight dip in the prices in the last few days, as more and more players will have gotten to higher tier maps, making the Harbinger mod the most likely one to be used for map sustain. As a result, more Ancient Orb shards will be dropping, thus increasing the supply for them. It is very likely that the Ancient Orbs will retain a large portion of their current value throughout the league, as even a slight rise or dip in the prices will be very impactful, considering the amount of Ancient Orbs needed to get a Headhunter at average. If the prices are ever considered worth it, they'll very rapidly rise, and if they're deemed not worthy, they'll fall just as quickly. So expect them to stay around the 20 to 30 chaos level for the majority of this league, barring any unforeseen circumstances, of course. We'll be taking another look at them next week, of course, to follow up on these predictions and see if they hold true. One addendum to this currency section for Blight League will be Blighted Maps, as they're mostly commodity like currency is, more so than an Atlas-specific or unique item. As such, I felt this would be the best place to put them in. Blighted Maps are currently rather unpopular due to the bugs, crashes, and less than ideal reward structure of them. GGG has already announced updates to them, so expect a sharp rise in prices for every single Blight Map starting on Tuesday, September 17th, which will likely be the release of the patch. If the patch does not release on Tuesday, it'll likely be Thursday instead. As such, if you are intended to run a ton of Blight Maps, it might be worthwhile to stock up now before the patch hits. As a general point of reference, so we can compare next week, Blighted Maps go for at least 12 chaos at the moment, even tier 1 maps. As such, if you're in need of many, do not skip your Blight encounters, as you will be skipping potentially a literal dozen of chaos for every Blight-specific chest that might spawn at the end of them. The most expensive Blighted map is the T15 Dark Forest, at about 58 chaos apiece. I'll update you every week at this point in the Chaos Report about the price changes and whether or not different tiers of Blighted maps seem worthwhile to buy or run. However, as they haven't received their update yet, I cannot give a review on it in this Chaos Report specifically. With those currencies and Blighted maps covered, let's move on to our unique item watchlist. Our predictions for some held true indeed. However, many items will be entirely removed from the watchlist, as they play no actual role in the current meta. The items that will be removed and not mentioned further in this Chaos Report are the Tremor Rod, as it currently seems to be buggy and it breaks the sequence. Miners are also not very popular this time around, so it will likely stay irrelevant. Bino's Kitchen Knife, as the early league has already shown a large oversupply of these, with very little demand. As a result, their part in the overall meta is also questionable from this point onward. The Blasphemous Grasp, as it does not seem to have impacted the economy in any major way. The bonuses it provides are likely too little to really build around it, like you would with the Oblivion Shroud. If these items happen to pop back up in the near future, I'll of course, gladly, add them back to the watchlist. Now, getting into the current watchlist, it now consists of only 5 unique items. However, I'll be adding more in next week's Chaos Report, such as the Dark Scorn and some bestiary related items I'll be mentioning later down as well. However, due to the already long length of this video, I won't be adding them this time around. Of course, if you have recommendations to add to the watchlist in future episodes, don't hesitate to let me know in the comments down below. First up, as always, the 2 jewels we've loved since Legion, the Tempered Flesh and Transcendent Flesh. Pretty much as predicted, we saw a large price drop since last league, as the removal of the Strength Cluster has made this jewel not as much of a no-brainer as before. However, it has retained a very respectable price at about 80 chaos. It is still a very solid choice for everyone that paths around the duelist/marauder area, and is definitely recommended if you can fit it into your crit-based build in any way. Another note on the creation of the Transcendent Flesh, just like last league, it is absolutely worth to buy yourself a vial of Transcendence and a Tempered Flesh, which are about 10c total right now, to make yourself one, either to use it or to sell it. You will of course require a tier 3 sacrifice room in the Temple of Axolotl in order to do this. This represents a solid alternative to simply throwing in a random unique item and hope for something better, as this will be a guaranteed 70 chaos plus profit. The future pricing of the Transcendent Flesh seems to be going upwards, as they have been on the rise for a couple of days. Couple that with the fact that most players will be done with their starter characters soon, and thus prompting an entirely new generation of characters to be created. We could see these jewels, that includes the other Transcendent options as well by the way, the Transcendent Mind and Spirit, rise by another 20 to 50% depending on the future meta shift caused by people switching away from the Summoner's starter build. Moving on to the most expensive flask in the game, and one of my personal favorites, the Bottled Faith. We predicted this one could easily conquer the spot as the most expensive flask in the game, and boy, did it not disappoint. The Bottled Faith is currently available for an astounding 15 Exalted Orbs. The reason for this extreme price point is manifold. Firstly, it is extremely rare. It can only be acquired through the Cortex encounter from Synthesis, which can only be obtained through a red map Zana mission. I'm not entirely sure if you are required a certain tier inside the red maps, however, similar to Farul with Einhar, which requires at least a tier 13. Secondly, this flask is best in slot for an absolute metric ton of builds, as it not only provides the largest untyped DPS increase in the entire flask meta, with its 10% increased damage mod taken, but also scales base crit chance of literally everything. If you're a summoner, this gives your minions more crit. If you're a spellcaster, your spells now crit more. If you're melee, same thing. It does not matter what build you are playing, this flask will absolutely be one of your best in slots in terms of raw DPS. The only build that gets around using this one as an endgame option are non-crit builds. However, even for those, the 10% increased damage taken mod still provides a large bonus. If you are still playing such a build and looking for a flask, I would recommend settling for the cheaper Cinder Swallow option instead, since it provides the same 10% increased damage taken mod. Since this flask is only available in red Zana missions, you'll likely want to keep an eye on global trade channels to see if there is any currency to be gained by selling your own missions, in case you aren't interested in running these yourself. For the future pricing of this one, they will likely drop, as more and more people get access to high-level red map farming, which seems to be a very good choice this league, as we're luckily not stuck on T2 glaciers anymore. Thank God. More people will also be randomly stumbling upon the Cortex boss fight. Additionally, items with such a high price point are prime suspects for target farmers that specifically focus on farming that particular item. As a result, the supply will also increase, as players will figure out certain ways to specifically farm this item in the near future, I'm certain. The Bottled Faith will continue to stay as the number one flask for pretty much the entirety of the league, however, and will likely retain a large percentage of its current value. I'm not expecting it to drop below 7 or 9x even, anytime this league, barring any unforeseen circumstances like a bug or figuring out that Zana missions are extremely easy to gain or something like that. Following that, let's take a look at how the Primordial Jewels are doing. As predicted, they are widely popular, especially Primordial Might Jewel. This one also had a bug with it that caused golems to not be turned aggressive. However, that will be fixed in the next patch, likely to come out Tuesday as mentioned before. The prices since League Start have fallen from its rather high starting point of about 100 chaos to its current price point of about 50 chaos. They are projected to keep falling in the near future. However, they still represent a decent farming opportunity for players that are just now getting into the mapping part of the game. To reiterate last week's recommendations for early farming of these particular jewels, you're looking specifically for the div card called the Primordial. To farm this div card, I would recommend T5 Grotto, as it also features the Rite of Elements as well as the Loyalty div cards. Additionally, Grotto has always been a very good map to run due to the amount of monsters that spawn in it. It's a very dense map. Furthermore, once you get your first yellow Shaper Orb, you can easily make an infinite sustain Grotto setup, as it only has one connecting tier 6. Simply shape up Grotto, and either unfinish or don't finish at all of your other tier 10 and tier 11 maps. If you're just starting your Atlas, simply do not finish any tier 10s or 11s at all, and you'll already have your Alkengo set up right there. Lastly, and probably its best selling point for farming purposes, it also drops the div card Hunter's Reward, which is currently priced at about 100 chaos each. This will allow you to not only farm div cards of low rarity with the loyalty cards to provide you with a very consistent income, but also with a bit more rare of a card in the Primordial to get you that extra chaos bump. Lastly, the Hunter's Reward will make sure that you got something to look forward to every once in a while, which will future-proof this farming setup for later weeks when the Primordial Jewels might not be worth farming anymore. Your setup will thusly never go to waste. As to future pricing, as they're already projected to continue falling and Golem monsters are a very popular starting build choice, more so than something to transition into later on, they're likely to continue their price drop, I would imagine they'll plateau sometime this following week at about 20 to 30 chaos. Next up, the Devouring Diadem. As we predicted last week, this helmet has seen a large amount of popularity among all kinds of different spellcasters. From summoners to self-cast and even some totem builds have utilized this helmet to easily and moderately cheaply deal with the newly created mana issues. The helmet started out at a fairly high price point of about 300 chaos, but has since lost about 50% of its value, as more players have had the ability to fight the mastermind and get this drop themselves. With a price point of about 150 chaos right now, we'll likely see a further drop to about 100 chaos in the next week, as the supply heavily outpaces the demand at the current moment. Previous leagues, such as Legion, saw this helmet drop to about a 55 chaos price point, for the majority of the league. For this league, however, I would imagine that the price point might stay a bit higher, due to an increased demand for all things spellcaster. As a result, I would predict them to stay above at least the 70 or 80 chaos price point throughout the league, though we'll have to see how the vastly improved Mastermind reward structure impacts the supply of this item comparatively to the demand. Now, moving on to a third segment for this video, the good old meta-analysis. Contrary to our predictions, we have seen a gigantic amount of summoners in the first week of this patch. I have definitely underestimated how many players are willing to re-roll, as the percentage of the player base at the high end that started with the summoner-based ascendancy has already dipped. It started this week at about 48% of all players going with a Necromancer starter character. However, this number has already dwindled down to about 43%. It will likely continue to fall as more and more players will be returning to their standard and more comfortable playstyles, as predicted last week. We'll likely see an increase in assassins as more and more will be able to figure out exact ways to use the new ascendancy for things other than poison and abuse the new elusive buff, as well as the old-time favorite Deadeye for high-end Blighted Map farmers for their Tornado Shot builds or similar. Especially once Blighted Maps have been buffed, we're likely to see a large increase in projectile-based characters or characters that are focused on large and extremely powerful area of effect abilities, such as Ice Nova. As a result, I would recommend caution when you're trying to invest in Necromancer-specific gear. There's still a great sale right now, but this might change after the Blighted Map rework. Similarly, summoners are also the most affected by the Blighted Map's poor performance, which also leads to a further decline in the player base of that particular playstyle. For now, however, continue focusing the majority of your crafting efforts on the summoners. Well, I wanted to say niche, but since they're more than 40% of the entire player base, I guess majority is the better word here. For examples of items to focus on, please refer to last week's meta prediction. As for the Atlas analysis, most of what I have recommended last week is still holding true. One thing to heavily consider are the new base types. The Vermilion Ring, which seems to be dropping in the lower half of the Atlas, as well as the Cerulean Ring, which drops in the upper half of the Atlas. The Convoking one seems to be situated at the top left corner of the Atlas, replacing the Bone Helmet spawn there. I'm not 100% sure on those placements, so if I got something wrong in this picture here, please let me know, so I can fix it for next week's episode. This should, however, give you a rough idea at the very least. As for high-level Atlas farming, Tower and Lair are still the best options for divination card drops, despite Lair already losing quite a lot of value due to the Evolving King's Bite dropping in the first week, as it always does. However, since Farrell's Fur is still holding strong, and Fusion Orbs will be needed more than ever, you will still make a grand fortune farming this map. One additional thing to consider, however, is that Tower is also placed in a Bone Helmet area of the Atlas, as well as the Vermilion Ring area. As such, both of these extremely valuable bases can drop in Tower, as far as I'm aware. This makes Tower the de facto best map to run if you're planning on an Elder Shaper tier 16 setup, as the bases, especially at eye level 86+, with Elder and Shaper influence, are worth a metric ton of Exalted Orbs. Furthermore, for players that prefer tangible currency to work towards, Precinct and Arcade are both very viable to farm. For an Arcade setup, I recommend a simple Shaper strat, where you shape up Arcade to a tier 6, unfinish all your other tier 6s and 7s, and then simply Alch and go for infinite sustain. Precinct is a prime choice, however, for a more full-on investment, as Precinct also features a great amount of bosses that can benefit greatly from a lot of different Sexton mods, such as the Harbinger mod, for example. It also features 3 connections, which is a bare minimum requirement for a semi-stable elder-shaped ping-pong. In conclusion here, choose whatever you feel will be best for your level of power, as well as willingness to invest in your initial setup. There are an absolute ton of viable options not mentioned here as well. So find your own map and call it home if you enjoy it. Now for the last little segment, some rapid fire farming and or crafting tips for some lower econ players that are extremely valuable in the first week. As mentioned last week, and pretty much all of the last league as well, delving is probably your best bet for making a quick buck, or 20. Update since last week however, aberrant fossils have proven to be in too high of a supply comparatively to their own demand, to truly rise up in the ranks of fossil prices. As such, abyssal depths have returned to being pretty much garbage areas. However, you can still find bound fossils in them, which is at least something. The new prime area to farm might sound familiar to most of you from last league. You'll be looking for the Frozen Hollow area of the mines, specifically for serrated and pristine fossils. It is by far the easiest area to darkness delve in, as the walls are very close to the actual coreless path, as well as offering a great selection of fossils. Outside of the Frozen Hollow, you'll also be looking primarily for the Petrified Forest, as this is where you'll gain the majority of your bound and corroded fossils. Serrated fossils right now sell at about 18 plus chaos, bound and corroded at 10 plus each, and pristine at about 9 chaos. Always remember to save up a few and sell in bulk, as you can easily ask for a 50% plus up price for a moderately well-sized stack. Remember to keep leveling up your skill gems in your offhand. You don't need an incredibly expensive Empower or Enlighten support though, of course, they would be preferred. Try focusing on Wrath, Raise Zombies as well as Cyclone. Getting a 21 to 20 gem can net you a couple of Exalted Orbs this early on in the league, so don't be afraid to corrupt them once they're at 2020. Crafting eye level 83 Abyssal Jewels, specifically the Ghastly Eye Jewels, are extremely worthwhile at the moment. Focus on at least one EHP roll, preferably life, at tier 3 or higher, as well as one offensive roll such as elemental damage added to minion attacks. Extremely popular are mods such as minions have percentage chance to taunt enemies on hit. A singular one of those with a good life roll can easily net 50 plus chaos for the right buyer. Simply alteration spam until you hit 2 good mods and then hope your regal hits something good. With the current prices however, you will even be good to sell them for a decent profit at 2 good mods. Einhar's master missions represent a great opportunity to make a ton of currency at the current time. Consider focusing down on them early on this league, as many of the B-Series uniques are worth an absolute fortune. Items such as the Farrell's Fur, of course, have always been pricey, but this time around very underused items such as the Sackerwolf's Nest or the Venomous Weave unique gloves are in high demand. Furthermore, this early on in the league, a lot of the normal recipes that don't involve the portal beasts are also in high demand for crafting. Things such as the prefix or suffix craft, the imprint recipe, and even just getting random unique items this early on will help kickstart your currency stockpile easily. As an additional tip here, don't forget that you can easily get a ton of red beasts in any map by using the Gilded Beast Series Scarab, which are also reaching extreme prices. Having Georgian in the Syndicate's intervention branch will guarantee you a steady influx of those. Lastly, remember that you can trade up your Blight League oils. If you're sitting on hundreds of low tier oils that see absolutely no use in your build, simply trade them all up into any vendor. They'll trade up in a ratio of 3 to 1 to the next level oil. If you sell at least 3 oils to any given type, you can throw in your entire stack no matter the number, as the vendor will simply give back excess oils that didn't get traded up. Warning, however, if you hand in less than 3 oils of the same type, there's simply vendor for 1 wisdom shard each. I'm not certain if that is a bug or intended, considering that they usually give back the oils if you hand in more than 3, so just keep that in mind for now. And with those last few tips wrapped up, I'll be ending this week's Chaos Report. I hope this video was informative and you learned something from it that you can apply to your own game. Please let me know if I missed anything or you would have wanted me to talk about anything in specific that I might not have covered. If you want to support the creation of these videos, feel free to check out my Patreon and maybe consider signing up for it. You can find a link to it in the description down below. Any and all support is highly appreciated. If you have any suggestions for Patreon rewards that you guys would like to see, please let me know on my Discord's feedback channel, down below this video in the comments, or on my Twitter. I read all of your comments everywhere. You can find a link to my Twitter and the Discord down below in the description as well. Furthermore, let me know if you'd like to see me cover a particular topic regarding Path of Exile. I'm always willing to explore new video types or add extra segments to this series. And of course, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell thingamajig, like or dislike the video, and check me out over on twitch.tv/LunaWolf. You can find a link to my stream down below in the description as well. And with that, thanks for watching, and keep farming those exils.